We had brought a fractional chief technology officer on to our team about 10 years ago, to really help us understand, because he helped us to really know at that time we were different than just a business brokerage company, because we had built our own software and we're developing that. We really had morphed into a technology company without knowing we were headed down that path. So he really caused us to look at things differently, and scaled up our business, helped us to get the right individuals. So we did that for a period of time. He left. We were happy. We kept our same resource. And then about 7-8 months ago, we called him back up and said, "We're just about to rebuild this whole thing. Our boss, or business operations and sales system, and I don't want to go it alone. I need some help." So, Liane, is that kind of a common situation where people say, I know what I know, but I also know what I don't know, and I better bring in the best?
Right. I think it's, and sorry about my signal earlier. I do think it's an opportunity for people to bring in high level expertise and strategy and experience at a fraction of the cost. So a brand might not be at the point where they need a full time CMO or CTO or chief AI officer like Robert's doing now, but they might not be ready for that, but they still need that executive level experience and strategy. Oftentimes with brands, they come in or they've got a director of marketing or they've got a marketing coordinator, but they're not quite ready. They don't have the vision or the management or leadership to help build the infrastructure, teams, and processes. So it's really kind of a win-win for everybody. You get the expertise at a fraction of the cost. And also, let me just jump in and say, I also invited, well, Michelle's here always, but invited Michelle and Paul Huszar from VetCore, because they are also brands in our space who are using fractionals. So I thought it would be a good perspective in addition to yours as well,
Oh,
Robin.
that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And Leanne, I appreciate so much you kind of pulling multiple resources together to really talk about this. And before we even go any further, can I just see via mic flash how many people have used in a okay, so multiple people. Does anyone want to weigh in on that experience or share anything about it as we sort of kick off the hour?
Hey,
So, Robin,
Robin. Go ahead. I'll wait. This is Paul.
oh, that's great. So, Paul, this is Michelle Rowan. How are you? Um, I think we both are big fans of Liane, but this is actually our second time that we've engaged with Liane. And so the first time was we didn't need it full time, but we needed helping us prioritize and kind of create a roadmap of how to grow our marketing team the first time around. And like you, Robin, we've gone back to Liane because our business has changed, but we have challenges in marketing that she's helping us tackle, but also she's helping us kind of restructure what's the best use of the people that we have and helping us really create better accountability and clarity in roles, which we're just like in the midst of. But the outside perspective and also having someone that works with multiple business, which this is what I say all the time on the franchisor versus supplier side, is that franchisors know their business so well, but they don't have that lens to see what's happening in other businesses. And so there's like this learning curve, I think, that Liane brings because of her experience in so many different ways with other brands. So this is Michelle, and I'm done speaking, but I think that's been the best use of her brain for us.
Yeah, I love that. We can sort of get tunnel vision, I think, within our own brands. And Paul, I'd love to have you weigh in as well. Jump in.
Yeah, everything that you and Michelle have said, and I'd add also the aspect of developing the strategy, right? Because when you're starting off as an emerging brand, you need to help crafting that strategy, but that's not a full-time job, but it's hugely important. The other piece is when you hire someone fractional, you get that level of quality in the strategy development and the management of what you need. But what you also get is that person's reputation and their relationships. So, like Liane, and also I use Danielle. Many of you probably know Danielle with Creative Shift, with our kind of outsourced CDO, if you will. And with both of them, I get relationships with vendors who they've already vetted, they already know. And I'm new in this space, so I don't know who to use for digital marketing, for reviews, for all of those types of things, and they help vector me into the right places and help me make those decisions that are also cost effective for me. The other thing I'd add is, I've been to several emerging franchisor conferences with IFA, and one of the most significant ones, David Barr gave this great presentation about why most franchisors fail. And it's like small businesses, they're undercapitalized. And he talks about financial capital, but where he really hits home is where they fail, and they often don't even know it, is intellectual capital, um, because you can't afford the infrastructure to get the full-time C-level people on your team as an emerging brand. So this way, the fractional aspect allows you to get the quality, the relationships, the strategy development, that level of management at literally a fraction of the cost, so you don't fail as a lack of the intellectual capital. Over.
Yeah, I think that is so critical because you simply can't, as an emerging brand, afford to put all those C-suite people in initially. Yeah, it's there's just no way to make the dollars, I guess, unless you have a fairy godmother financing your franchise or something. So. And I think about fractional until this conversation. I've always just thought about fractional being Greg for us is there for a period of time, but it's also relates to, yeah, it's a fraction of the cost to have this superior intellect that you can call upon. Does anyone else have a question or want to weigh in immediately? Remember, this is your time on Clubhouse, so
Hey,
we
Robin,
want
this
to,
is Troy, if I can.
yeah, go for it.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is actually the model of my entire consulting firm, Kiwi Restaurant Partners, and this is not a pitch or a thing, but you guys are right on spot. I don't actually have any added points to what's been said because you've covered really the top line bullet points of the value. Something we do that's a little different in the fractional space is that you get our entire team for the cost of one executive. So rather than one executive for a fraction of that executive's value, we actually give you 6 or 8 people on a team for about the cost of one executive. And really, I would say less than the total cost of a normal executive, but a little bit different model within fractional. But here's the funny thing is that our company uses fractional. So we use people that we don't need all the time. We call them up on a project by project basis, or even for Kiwi, we call them up to help us, whether that's marketing or most commonly finance stuff. Our CFO has a full-time job, but she is available to us on a needs basis kind of a deal. So we both deploy fractional, but we also use it. So that's to show you, even on whether you're a franchisor, franchisee, whether you're a consulting group or a vendor of some kind, this is a very powerful tool. And by the way, in many cases, you can get some of the highest caliber people that are most seasoned, the most experienced, that have the most connections and resources, that just want to give of their knowledge and expertise and bring their value to the table and bring their connections and introductions to the table that help accelerate and make your business more efficient. Those people tend to be the ones that are most available for this type of arrangement. So it's, in my opinion, can be even better than hiring even a high quality executive in a particular department or position, to use multiple fractionals across different departments or positions so that you can leverage really that premium value that comes with the years of experience and connectivity. So just wanted to throw that idea.
And this is Madeline. Troy, I'll follow up on that, is that I do this as well, and I'm a multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee. I work with a supplier and also do the fractional thing with franchise brands. And I think one of the biggest things for any of the franchisors listening is that the great thing about a fractional, and sorry if this was already mentioned by Liane, but it's that we're not as close to the brand. So I see, especially with a lot of emerging franchisors, that this is your baby, and it's very hard to see past that sometimes. So that can also be a big benefit of just having someone that's not so close to the brand be able to kind of nitpick in a way that's helpful, and it's definitely going to help, kind of avoid some obstacles that may, turn into snowballs later down the line. But that's just my 2 cents.
That's great conversation. And Robert actually posted something that I think is very critical is, what's the downside? What are kind of the cons of a fractional person in your C-suite? And I think it can be, for me, it's I get on a roll and then I need more of their time than they have are able to give me in that moment. And because the projects sort of ebb and flow, so I think there's that good folks in those fractional roles. I think can be a can be a con if you don't have the availability that you need right when you need it. And I don't know if others have thoughts they want to weigh in on that. Diane?
Hey, Robin.
Thank you, Robin. And this is Diane Davis. And I think I want to add to that because there are upsides and downsides to this. And I love hiring fractional talent because it does allow you a firepower you couldn't afford otherwise. And if I get it, and I want to hire people that are fractional to be able to maximize budgets. My question comes in, Robin, within the United States, with the Fair Labor Standards Act and the Department of Labor's definition of an independent contractor. When we're bringing in fractional talent, we're bringing them in as a contractor. Well, if they are like a chief of a department, they may be actual having employees, thereby negating the fact that they can't be an independent contractor because they're supervising people. So I need help understanding how to make the independent contractor model of a fractional C-suite work with the labor laws in the United States. And I know that's not the sexiest topic of the day, but it's a huge one and one that could be highly problematic for all of us.
Okay, so which of my illustrious panelists wants to take that on? I've never been in a situation with our CTO or fractional where he directed any personnel. It's always just been a direct conversation with me.
Yeah, Robin, it's Troy, and I apologize. Tell me if you can hear the background noise. Unfortunately, I can't escape the Vegas background noise. I'm at MUFC. Can you hear me okay without all that added music and
Yeah,
such?
yeah, we
Okay,
can hear
great.
you.
Okay, great. I'll just take this on briefly from the perspective that my company is based in California, and a fair amount of our business tends to launch in California as far as brands go and doing this work. AB5, which is most restricted independent employment law in the country, which other states are starting to think about adopting elements of it, is terrible. We're fighting it. It is what it is. But she makes a very, very good point. It's a very important point. I think one of the major distinctions in this is that you're using a fractional not to run a department or direct the people of a department in many cases. In some cases, it does happen that way. But as was mentioned just before me, we really see it as the fractional is bringing all of the knowledge, experience, resources, introductions, tools to the table. They're educating the team and then giving the team the strategy, the plan, the calendar, etc., to go do their job even better with more information and more support. But I think the distinction is as long as they are not directing employees as a supervisor, you really do avoid that issue. But please be sure that it cannot be John Smith. You know, you're writing a check to John Smith on a weekly or monthly basis. It has to be a corporation. They have to have a consulting firm. They just have to have a business. And it actually can be John Smith LLC, but it would be better if it's John Smith Fractional CMO Business LLC. And that would help sort of put a distance between the employer-employee relationship if you're actually hiring a consulting corporation that John Smith happens to provide services for.
I'd also say too, like, you have to, with fractional, and I put that in the chat, is that a lot of times employees don't want to get too close with them because they know it's kind of like an interim thing, how much are they really going to help? Is this going to affect my job, especially for people that may work, if a fractional CMO comes in and then there's, marketing directors, marketing assistants, they kind of have a wall up and that can affect culture. So if you start having a fractional manage, it can be a very tricky situation. So I tend to do it one-to-one with the head of the what department, if you will, but it's also definitely something that making sure it's a culture fit, even if it is a fractional person, because they are going to have an effect on your culture, whether it's they're talking one time to your team or every day. So just something to think about.
Yeah. Oh, Leanne, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, I that's a great point. But I would say that I think there's definitely some hesitation with teams and bringing somebody in and they're like, who is this? Where do they come from? And what are they talking about? Over time, it becomes because missing piece they have and realize that they also get the leadership and the vision and the strategy so that they can perform and do their jobs better. So I haven't found that culture, at least for me in my cases, that culture has been an issue. But I do notice at the beginning it is kind of like very hesitant, like, why do I have to talk to them? But sometimes it's also on the other thing, it's like, oh, thank God there's somebody to talk to about this because we needed leadership here. So I don't disagree with you, but I think in my experience that hasn't actually been a bad thing.
That's good feedback. And Ingrid, you put something very important in the chat. Do you want to expand on that? Just that understanding up front. What are the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Understand the engagement.
So I think Brewski asked if, like, what are the negatives? And I think that sometimes expectations are the negative, and people come in really wanting us as fractional C-suite employees to just run the world. And so I have found that really putting clear boundaries in our contracts and in our scope of works, so they know A, our working hours, B, that we have other projects. And, as a fractional employee, I have 10 things that I'm balancing. So I can't always be super responsive, but I am super responsive. But also knowing that, like, on a Saturday, if you call me, I may not answer the phone because that's outside my working hours. And then also putting hours down for scope of work. Like, what does this actually look like? When are my deliverables due? What are expectations? Because if you set those out first, no one's hurt in the long run, right? It doesn't jeopardize your relationships. So this is Ingrid, and I'm done speaking.
Hey, Robin, this is Megan. I agree with Ingrid so much as, when you're hiring someone fractionally, there's an expectation from that person that it's your business ultimately, right? So when I've coached individuals, I was never their direct report. It was a coaching program, and there was very, very detailed notes, agendas. Everybody was on the same page. And I also just want to give a shout out to Liane because I had the opportunity to work with her as a franchisee with FranNet as a fractional C-level, and she did a fantastic job. So I think what it really is, and I never felt, Leanne, that I couldn't reach out to you. I certainly knew when and how, but I think that's about the launch of that person coming into the company and why, and the leaders really getting behind the project too. So there's a lot of communication that needs to be done properly.
Yeah, great point. Absolutely.
Hey, Robin, this is Paul again. I would add, both with respect to the time constraints, the culture, I commented that, they're not as responsive as we would like sometimes, but I think what that forces a company to do, and for example, we run on EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so if you're familiar with that, there's the meeting pulse, right? What you meet and what KPIs you discuss weekly, monthly, et cetera. We call that in that core battle rhythm because that's what we call it in the military. I think that's hugely important. And to the extent, like Leanne helps us, she's here in Tampa with us. So there are times when she can come in person, and that's helpful because of the interpersonal relationships and things, particularly with culture. But it doesn't have to be all the time. And what that forces us to do by sticking to that battle rhythm is being disciplined at what we're measuring, what we need to talk about, and when, so we're more efficient with our time. The other thing I would add is a key to an exceptional fractional C-suite person is that they're always prepared. They're looking for when it's time to transfer to the full-time person. And when it is, they're ready to tell you when it is. So they're basically working themselves out of a job. And when they work themselves out of a job, they're actually able to help recruit, develop a job description, onboard that person, and transition them effectively. And I've had that experience. We had a fractional CFO previously. They helped us write a job description to bring a controller in. We didn't need it. We didn't need necessarily a full-time CFO, but we needed. They found themselves doing a lot of transactional stuff. They said, "Hey, we're too expensive for you to do transactional stuff. So if you get a full-time controller, here's a job description. Here's what we're doing." They helped us with that. Danielle is actually in the process of helping us. She's like, "I think it's time for you to transition to a full-time person for Fran Dev." She's working through that, and she's helped me interview people. She's helped me find people, and she said, "Hey, when you find the right fit, I'll help you onboard them and transition what I've been doing for you over to them."
Thanks, Paul. Angela, jump in. We'd love to hear from you.
Oh, I just was gonna, I think, just validate or agree with, I guess, Paul. I think it's really important for when we go in and work with teams that our goal is to help them learn what we can bring in, and that it's an investment into their long-term growth. It's not like a band-aid solution. It should be something that helps them work towards having that in-house. Like, I think it's from a, a cost perspective, it doesn't make sense for them just to pay us, get us, short term, and then we leave and they just, there's nothing. Like, they need to, it needs, I love what Paul was just saying, explaining how, they, as when we're going in like that, we need to help them with the plan of how are you going to do this on your own. So I just really love that you said that, Paul.
Robin, can I jump in and to conversation? This is Robert.
Absolutely.
So I want to make one observation, maybe somewhat counter to a couple of the other individuals. My thought is, if you're thinking about being a fractional anything, you're looking at being an entrepreneur. And what do we tell entrepreneurs in franchising is, you can work half days, you can do whatever you want the other 12 hours. And so I encourage people to have an open mind, because at least that's how I operate. Is that I don't clock in and clock out as an entrepreneur. It's just, you can't. So I want to be available to my clients whenever they're available. I work with international people; their hours are all wonky, right? So it's important to know that, as I am available on weekends. I am available after hours. If I'm not available, I won't answer the phone. So that's an easy way of saying that. But I just want to put that in your mindset that we can't have a 9 to 5 if we're going to be fractional. In my opinion, it doesn't work that way, especially because I see fractional as an entrepreneurship, as a business owner, and you never clock out as a business owner. That's just my opinion. So I'm done talking.
Love that. Thank you. There's just like a lot going on today and many people wanting to weigh in. Flash your mic if I didn't catch you previously and you want to ask a question or just kind of provide some more color and commentary to the conversation. Okay. Um, do I am I alone and believe? Oh, Angela, I'm sorry. Jump in.
Yeah, I guess this point was made a little bit, but I just want to really highlight it, that in our experience, it's so important that you build credibility with the team when you go in, and that they don't feel like, I know we talked about it, I think more from a culture perspective, but we also need to be respectful about the people that are there and their expertise, and help them understand what we're bringing that might be different. And then, so one of the ways that we do that is we just really give them the opportunity to teach us what we need to know, and truly try to Ingrid, stay in your lane. Make sure that we're going to stay in our lanes when we go in there, and then also collaborate on things when necessary. But getting really clear on that at the beginning, we have found to be really important. So I think if you're thinking of hiring somebody fractional, and make sure that they understand that, and they're going to do that with you. And this is Angela, and I'm done speaking.
Well, I just want to quickly, because we're right at just about at the 12:30 mark, just kind of quickly reset the room and remind everybody this is Robin Gagnon, and this is the Women in Franchising on Clubhouse. Thank you for joining us this weekend, any week that you have the opportunity to jump into the conversation. Today, we are talking about the rise of the fractional C suite, how it works, how it helps, how it saves money, and also, right, we're confronting the realities that what the expectations, setting those, and making sure we don't go off the mark um, as it relates to bringing more people onto our team. Incredibly valuable um, way in which you can expand and scale your business. And I did see a great question in the chat window. Robert wants to understand, and Robert, I don't know if you just want to articulate this yourself, but the difference between a fractional C suite, like a CMO, and a consultant, more like a marketing consultant or an agency that offers services. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I can provide some color on that. And generally, I'm just trying to weed through the nomenclature and the titles here, right? Because to me, somebody who is a C-suite also typically takes on a lot of leadership, manages a team, makes decisions, plans out a game plan, and reports that up to the integrator. EOS terminology here. And I sometimes find it hard to see how somebody can do that fractionally. And to me, oftentimes a fractional C-suite person kind of sounds like a consultant, but in framing it that way, a consultant doesn't take on a lot of these leadership and decision making things. They just kind of give you a plan, and you have to execute it rather than them executing it. And then a third sort of factor that falls in there is a marketing agency. I mean, I work with a really great marketing agency that creates our plans for us, executes them, does all the research, things that I would expect the CMO and their team to do. So for me, it's almost kind of like a blur, and I wonder if it's just a different way of calling a person this that does the same thing, or if there actually truly is a difference. My name is Robert, and I'm done speaking.
So
I'm happy.
oh yeah, Leanne, I'd love for you to weigh in, and then I was just going to share a little bit about our experience, but go for it.
Okay, I'll jump in on. I'll try to cover some of your points, Robert. So I think that when you call it a fractional CMO, so I have this problem even on my LinkedIn. Am I a franchise marketing consultant or am I a fractional CMO? I'm a little bit of everything. It depends on what the company needs me to be. So as a fractional CMO, I actually come in and I fill a role. I fill a spot in that org chart, right? And that is the strategy. That's the vision. It's helping with the budgets. It's helping maybe being a little more cautious on the labor piece of it, but it's helping to oversee a team. It's helping give the team responsibility and accountability. So I think that's the role of a fractional C-suite. There's other times I come in and I do fractional marketing consulting. So it's more, you need a grand opening plan, or I've done audits before for companies, like, do you have all the right vendors in place? Are you getting the best value? Maybe they're in transition and I come in and I help look at what they've got existing, and how can they be better and do better and meet their goals and objectives. So I think it's a little bit of everything. I think the big difference of an agency is an agency has multiple people behind it, and maybe more, definitely not calling your consulting company an agency, Troy, but the ability to do multiple things for clients and execute, like, tactically and strategically. Not all brands, and I'm sure many people can attest that they have a strong marketing agency that also does strategy and vision. And as you grow bigger, I would say that your strategy and vision needs to be held in-house, and then a third party can help execute, certainly, but it's great that you have a partner that is able to do that. Oftentimes third party relationships go away, and then that oversight and that vision also goes away, and it presents some challenges. So I hope that helped a little bit.
And I would tell you from our experience, I think that's very insightful, Leanne. From our experience, our fractional CTO has challenged us and definitely helped us primarily on the strategy side of things. But as far as getting into the weeds and then, doing the interface with our development team, he pushes us to be better and pushes us to align our strategy with where we should go as a company in ways we hadn't thought of. But he's not in there, pulling the triggers and making things happen. That falls to our team to then implement and integrate. So I don't know if that's true in every case, but that's what's happened with us both times we've used a fractional chief technology officer for project based.
I'll jump in real quick and just again my opinion. I'm a little bit newer at the fractional role in some regards, and this is Robert talking again. Sorry, and my thought is that the difference to the other Robert's question is ownership. I feel like I take more ownership than I would be if I was hired as a consultant. Um, that word I think is a big word to use, ownership or accountability. And I think the fractional, at least in my opinion, and how I operate, I feel like that's the differentiator. You know, as a consultant, you come in, you advise. You like if you don't listen, it's like a lawyer. Lawyers typically advise, and then the C-suite decides what they're going to do with that level of information. That's kind of how I see consultants. Whereas fractional, they're embedded in the organization, like Liane said in the work chart, and they purposely. And maybe it's a culture thing. They take ownership, and again, another point you were making, I feel like they consult the managers. So going back to the legal question earlier, I don't think they actually manage people. I think they consult the managers to manage people. But that aside, going back to my original point, I feel like when I'm doing the role for Casual Pine or for Franchise Biz or for Yellow Corner or the ones in Europe, it's always about I'm not seeing myself as fractional. I'm seeing myself as an employee, and I'm taking ownership. I'm taking responsibility. I'm executing like I would if I was full time, and that's just a perception thing, but it's also a mentality. I'm done talking.
Yeah, that is. Thank you for weighing in, Robert. So important to hear that perspective, and I think also the way one of the ways in which you actually perform your role, you're doing this fractional AI work, and that's just so tip of the spear, so new, so like no one's bringing someone on full time to do AI, but um, everyone has it on their mind of how they can implement AI. So I think it's also critical when something is like new and expanding to know again what you don't know and bring somebody external to the table. I want to see any other thoughts or questions. I've got more on my list to ask, and there's more happening in the chat. Um, Tell me a little bit about how. I mean, it as someone who does fractional work, and I think I'll just ask everybody to kind of respond to this that does the work in the field. What how can a brand best utilize the services of someone in their fractional C-suite? What are the, what do they need to set up their themselves? What do they need to set up their brands for success?
I'm sorry. I wanted to jump in real quick, and before that question gets answered, and go back to the end of your last sentence about CAIO, the Chief AI Officer, because that's such a new title and such a new area. It's even more usable in this fractional ecosystem than any other one. This is why is typically you're going to have a Chief M, a Chief T, a Chief D, and they're siloed into an organization of reports. But the Chief AI Officer, they got to be able to touch every department and have equal influence on every different silo, which is extremely unique. And it's almost going back to the consultant thing. So I would say this is kind of opening up a whole new era of fractional, or a whole new opportunity of fractional, being that when you come in, you have to interface with the operations department. You have to interface with the training. You have to interface with technology, and of course the franchisor relationship. That's a whole other thing. But being able to know the bottlenecks, know the technologies that will be apply, know the processes that may or may not be franchise AI ready or adaptable to an AI tool. Those are all things that is very hard to do from a siloed role, right? If you're an embedded chief technology officer, you don't have the bandwidth or the job description that allows you to jump to other silos. So sorry to jump ahead or backwards. I just wanted to make sure I made that point.
No, I think it's a really critical point, and I think also not just the idea that that you really have to have this visibility on every single front of the business, but also the understanding that it's so very new. People have to understand, what are the legal ramifications, what are the internal policies going to be, and you need a specialist, not someone just reading the latest article, because everything's out of date a minute later, in this kind of fast-paced world. So I think that's critical as well. So then to jump ahead to back to that next thought process is, tell us, Liane, how can brands best, and then everyone who works in that role, how do you work best? What do brands need to do to set themselves up for success with this C-suite fractional role?
What's the best way to set them up for success? I would say, well, kind of going back to what somebody mentioned earlier, Ingrid, definitely having clear, defined scope. So a lot of times I'll have a few discovery calls before we even agree to work together, just to make sure that I'm a good fit, I can accomplish what you need, and that we're all on the same page as the scope. And then the first thing I do is, the first part of the project is always the most time intensive, and that's really, I like the word that Robert's been using, is embedding myself. So I'm kind of embedding myself in the organization and really just listening, not coming in and making sweeping changes, but really listening, interviewing one-on-one all of the key stakeholders, whether if you're dealing with teams, if you're dealing with vendors, if you're dealing with the other executives on the organization, just kind of really hearing where their challenges are and where the gaps are, where they find themselves to be successful, and just kind of understanding where everybody is in this moment and what their ideal goals and objectives are. And then we can be on the same page moving forward. So you can make a lot of assessments. And I was telling someone this morning, I'm interviewing all of the team, and it really became therapy sessions. And then I had multiple therapy sessions with them because they were facing challenges, or they're, facing frustration points and all of these things for a lot of different reasons that maybe the executive team doesn't always have insight into. And so we can close the gap on those communication levels, because someone from the outside looking in is just hearing what everybody needs. So I think setting yourself up for success in that way is just really understanding wholeheartedly and embedding yourself in that organization to understand what's necessary to be able to move forward in a productive way. I'm going to go with Paul and say over, because I like that better.
Hi, this is Amanda. I just want to agree with what Leanne said about the importance of those stakeholder interviews. I think from my perspective, they've been invaluable, and not just in to learn, what the actual needs are, but also to learn how to work with folks the best possible. So, kind of get a glimpse of the personalities and the challenges and all that. And additionally, something that I've tried is starting out with a smaller the chunk of a project, or maybe a couple of stakeholder interviews that produce some valuable takeaways for the client, but also, again, allow me to meet them to meet me, and really understand sort of how this could and will work. Because, you know, this is a newer approach to things, and I think it's a little bit unsettling, especially for some brands and companies that maybe have been around a while and never heard of this type of thing. So, that has proven to be extremely helpful in the forward success of things, and just setting us up for understanding what everybody wants out of it. And this hasn't happened to me yet, but there, that could also be an opportunity to say, I don't know if this is a great fit, that type of thing. Over.
Great feedback. Ingrid, did you want to?
Yeah, so we've kind of set this up. It's a great question to measuring success, but we and measuring success and setting yourself up for success. But we've have kind of 10 steps, and it's first we clearly define goals and expectations. After we've kind of courted and dated, like Leanne said, we have to set expectations, and then we have to establish a communication plan. What does that look like to communicate back and forth, and how do we communicate again with boundaries? Um, We develop resources so that and KPIs so that we know we're on the right track, right? If we don't set goals and we're not achieving those goals, we're not going to be successful for them. And then we often foster like a collaborative environment with the team. I think, and I said it in the chat, positioning ourselves as mentors for the creative directors or for the marketing directors, and not coming in like, hey, we're taking your job, but like, hey, we're actually here to foster community and help you guys learn and grow, is one of the best ways that we have positioned ourselves. We're doing that right now to Brand Journalists at Brand J, and their team at first was a little apprehensive of us, but like, hey, we're not coming in to like ruin your job. We're here to make it easier, and we're here to make it flow better, and we're here to think through things so that we can really, really make you guys successful. So and then again, being open to feedback and learning. We're constantly taking feedback from our clients to know what they want, to know how to move the bus, to know how to turn left and right. It's really important to know that we're doing a good job and that we are meeting their needs. So I think success is also asking, like, are we doing what you need us to do, or do we need to pivot? And this is Ingrid, and I'm done.
Hey, Robin, this is Troy. If I could
Yeah, go
thought
for
of
it.
something while everybody was talking. I'll try. This is off the cuff, but I had a conversation yesterday that's really applicable to this topic today. A longtime consultant that I respect and know very well called me and said, we caught up, and he had a couple of he had an introduction he wanted to make to help one of his clients, etc. And then he said, hey, by the way, I just wanted to let you know I'm starting a coaching practice, a coaching program. And I said, okay, well, you've been a consultant for a very long time. I know exactly what you do and how you do it. But what is the difference between your consulting and your coaching? And I think there's still people in this room, and I empathize with people that are still questioning what the hell's the difference between a coach, a consultant, and a fractional position. And here's how he explained it to me. As a coach, his offering is a structured, progressive program focused on the executive's individual needs and encouragement. And so a coach is going to help you as the leader or an executive in your group identify their strengths and weaknesses, work on self awareness and empathy and whatever the struggles they're having, maybe if they're not connecting with their team, etc. A coach is a personal therapist. To I think I think Ingrid or Liane said that's what it ends up being. Consultant is going to tell you what you need to do and how you need to do it, and they're going to make introductions to and bring resources to the table. And please, again, for everybody in the room, everybody does this differently, but in general terms, the consultant's not actually doing the work or going to be authoring SOPs and things like that. In many cases, whatever you want to call it, a fractional, and again, this is where it goes to whether they're an employee or not, so be careful. But a fractional will be bringing to you the answers, the solutions, and the materials, and they may produce things. And I'll say the difference between a consultant and a fractional, I think, can both do this. But the difference between a coach and most consultants in a fractional is, and it was sort of said earlier, is that they're going to embed and understand your business, understand your team, understand the dynamics, understand your goals. And unlike the agency, because I have hire many different agencies for different things, but unlike a PR or a marketing agency, that embedded mindset, that deep understanding, that due diligence that was done, like Liane said, that multiple discovery calls, a fractional is going to know you and your business and your goals and your trajectory and your skills and your weaknesses. And then they're going to craft the relationship with those agencies. They're going to lead or at least advise you on how to lead your relationship with those agencies. If you ask your PR or marketing agency to just come up with a strategy, they're looking in from the outside. I don't care how many times they come to your restaurant or your business or come to your home office and visit for a day. They're not making the investment into understanding your business to the degree that a fractional would. So I hope that helped bring clarity. That's from my perspective. I know there's variance within all those things I said, but I think on broad strokes, there's a clear difference between a coach, a consultant, and a fractional, and what they actually do for and with you or give you, and then how they might interface with your vendor partners and your agencies and your solutions providers. I just think it's I think it's you know, and being in the business, I think it's clear to me, but I understand why it's not clear to most, because we have to explain it every day, about 10 times a day, to who we're talking to, working with. So
I think that's great feedback and information, Troy, and I'm seeing others that are kind of responding positively too. Um, So let's just give ourselves a minute here for a jumping off point and see if others want to either weigh in on the conversation, share something about a path they went down with a fractional. And I guess this is a question, Liane, I would ask everyone who's done fractional work. Have you ever been in a situation where you're doing fractional work and then the brand is like, we need you full time? You know, we see how valuable this is and we want you to join.
Yes, I have. It wasn't a fit for me at the time. And I love having my hands in multiple businesses, but I also come from the agency life. So I'm used to wearing those multiple hats and working with multiple brands at one time. It's kind of where I thrive. So it wasn't a good fit for me at the time, even though I love the brand. But to someone else's point earlier, I helped them interview. It's actually happened with two brands. I helped them interview and find the right person for the position, and those brands are totally thriving with these people, and I like, it just makes my heart so happy that I had a hand in not only setting them up for success, but then helping them find the right person, because it was so easy for me to see who the right person would be, and as long as it was a culture fit with the CEO and, you know, everybody met all the expectations. It's just kind of cool to see. So yes, I have had that happen before, but I generally don't bring it.
You
I'm
don't
sorry.
get to come to the temptation to be in
Right,
just one company. That's
right,
great. And
right.
I'm assuming others have that happen because they could just, you know, see a situation where, you know, you're pushing a brand forward. And I think that is, again, I can only rely on the experiences that we have, but I think our fractional CTO has really challenged us to think about the business in different ways, that we wouldn't have. And so I just think that perspective is so valuable to bring someone from the outside. What have we not talked about that we should have talked about? Someone who is either used a fractional, is considering bringing someone on a fractional basis. Angela, jump in. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I just have a question. I'm not sure how I'm going to frame this. It's been on my mind and I'm trying to think of the words, but I'm going to do my best here. I'm just thinking about the cost, or as we like to say, the investment here. When earlier, very earlier, much earlier in the conversation, um, we talked about it being a fraction of the cost. I mean, the way I look at it is, I'm going to pay, like, the amount I'm going to pay for what I'm getting is, that's where it's a fraction of the cost. Like, if I bring somebody in house to do that work, I probably am not going to pay as much if I multiplied that by, like, the amount of time they're actually, like, if they went to full time. If that fractional person was full time, that cost would be higher than me bringing somebody in that's a little more junior. So um I don't know, I just wanted to understand if anybody feels differently, that, like, no, it actually isn't that way. Like, maybe people, I don't know how people invoice for their services, but I feel like it's like, if I bring somebody in as a marketing CMO, if like, I would think, like, Liane, if I brought you in for as a full-time CMO, that would be a lot more expensive than me bringing in somebody, obviously, that, you know, didn't have your level of experience. So it's is more that we're just talking about, like, the bang for your buck. I don't know if I
Yeah,
clarified that enough.
I think so. I think it's not inexpensive to bring on a fractional, but you're bringing the value and the expertise. But yet, right, if you look at it, like, if my hourly rate was, you know, $200 an hour, and times that times a full-time salary, most of the time, and the brands in this industry aren't going to be able to afford that as an actual salary, you know. So I think it's more of, hey, I can bring you $60,000 a year, but you're getting a $200,000 a year employee. I'm terrible at math. You guys get what I'm saying, but you know what I mean?
You're
Like,
good at marketing.
I'm good at marketing. I was not meant to be put on this earth for math. So that's one of the things is I think that they know that if they have to bring in a VP of marketing or a CMO, that's going to be well over $100,000 a year, up to 200, 250. And this way they can bring in the expertise and the value for a fraction of the cost. So say it's $60,000 and it is a win-win for everybody. It it's not to devalue the cost of the person. I think it just helps people put it in perspective of the value of the relationship and what they're getting for a fraction of the cost.
Right.
Does,
Okay. So
does
it's
that
along the lines. Yeah, that is. I just wondered if I'm missing something here because, like, I would think that, yeah, if it's not actually a fraction, it's just a fraction of what. Again, it's about the what you're getting, like bang for your buck. So I just wondered. I don't know if anybody else here thinks differently about that, but that is what I was thinking. So thank you for clarifying that.
and I think the word fractional is really intended to be the time component, not the money component. But when C-suite CEOs are looking to invest in this role or this position, um, they can't help but equate it with a role in the company. So it's like they have to look at it that way. I've tried it. I tried to price it and structure it so many different ways to not trade time for money, but it's just the way that people can sit with it better.
And the other
Oh,
thing is sometimes, you know, Leanne, and we see this unfortunately on our side of the business because we help people with exit strategies. When folks haven't prepared for an exit and don't have a succession plan in place, and there aren't feet in the seat to lead, you know, I've seen fractional CEOs have to come in, fractional COOs have to come in, and you're talking about very high level people who have got to come in and quickly save a company to keep it from being, wiped out because there really wasn't someone to keep the whole leadership team together and keep the company together after some kind of a unexpected a death or a disability or something unintended happens. So I think the role we've talked about a CMO, we've talked about so many different roles, but I mean there are people that will come in and be your substitute CEO in a time of crisis, and so very very high caliber people out there available. I guess I'm just trying to say at every level of an organization. Thoughts, feedback. We're coming up on like 3 more minutes. So I have time for probably one person to jump in with a question or perspective.
And
Um,
Robin, this is Diane Davis, and my input on this would be in my experience with fractionals, and we loved having fractionals at JBF. Is that, and Ingrid spoke to this, was to be certain that the scope of work is really agreed to, written and agreed to, because in cases of the fractionals we worked with, when they both told me I'm working well beyond the amount of hours I'm getting paid for, I about died because that was not sustainable. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, if you're already pushing your hours and our budget is stretched to the limit, this is not realistic. We can't continue this. And so I think monitoring those hours and being certain, I appreciate that they were wanting to help us, but they weren't doing us any favors because we need to know realistically what the cost there is to help mentor and support that company to where it needs to be. And at the end of that contract, if I would have said now that we're going to be ready to hire a CFO, if he had turned to me and said, well, I've actually been working 40 hours anyway, I mean, we would have really been in trouble. So that would be, I think, the point to this is to really make sure you have your scope of work down and that it's monitored on an ongoing basis as the needs of the company change. Diane, over.
Love it, Diane. Thank you. And that leaves us with just a minute to close out the room. Just before we wrap up today, I want to thank everyone for showing up and speaking up and participating in this great hour that we have every week to talk about everything. And Leanne, thank you for recommending the the idea for today's topic, and anyone who has other ideas, let me know. I'm so sad that I'm not at multi-unit, because I know the world is there, and many of you. Just a couple reminders on your calendar: Legal Symposium and the IBA IFA Joint Conference are coming up second week in May. The IFA Regional Virtual event is May 18th. South Florida is having an in-person event on June 1, and the International Franchise Expo is June 1 through 3 in New York. So keep those franchise events top of mind. Continue to share, interact, mentor, and help each other. Let us know how we can help. Tell a friend about the Women in Franchising on